everybody, and welcome to another exciting episode of Radiorama, where I show you how to work on radios, televisions, and other stuff. I'm not sure why I'm filming myself, but today we have a 1955 Zenith television set. These are also referred to as Bugeye sets. I actually own this exact same model in the same color and everything. So we're going to give it a shot. We're going to see if we can get this guy up and running. Okay, so first of all, I know it doesn't work. I briefly brought it up about a week ago. It's also got some strange features on it. It's got this, Zenith loved to use this term, wave magnet. And this thing has its own power source. I'm not sure what that's supposed to be. It's got a plug on the side. I'm not sure if there was some sort of motorized antenna that plugged into this. I have no idea. I really don't. No one ever took the sticker off of this either. Now, I find this very interesting. Zenith was very proud of themselves for not using printed circuits. And there's a reason for that. It's because a lot of American manufacturers, as soon as printed circuits came out, they were like, oh, goody, because it was a lot cheaper. The only problem is when you have tubes that get hot as hell, that would cause the degradation of the phenolic board material. It would become brittle, the leads would lift off, just all kinds of problems. So Zenith held out and hand wired everything forever. That meant that it was a little more expensive, but they were in turn better quality, easier to service, and more reliable. In fact, I just finished a few Zenith radios over there, and again, they're all direct point-to-point hand wired. So what I'm going to do first is remove the back of this thing, and I want to take a look inside, see if we've got filament on all the tubes. I also want to see if we have high voltage. I'm guessing this thing's probably never been recapped, so probably all the caps in it are all stale, and that could kill your high voltage. I'm also going to premise by saying I'm not a television guy. I used to work on more of them, but it's been years since I did much with them. So this is kind of a reintroduction to myself of televisions after the first one, which you guys saw, which was kind of ended successfully, but was a kind of a failure as far as my working ability to get it working. It took a village of us to get it working again. All right, here's the back removed of this puppy, and someone's definitely been in here. There's evidence of work having been done, and not very good work at that. This is clearly a floating chassis set. I don't think it has a transformer. This is the rectifier here. We have a pair of selenium rectifiers, and this wire is coming loose. If that's the case, that would really mess things up. Let's take a look. See if anyone's been in the flyback transformer area. Should be under this cover. Oh, come on. Like, how's that supposed to open? It should just slide right open. There we go. That didn't look too bad. In fact, the last one I worked on, the guys in the radio forum was like, don't worry about what they look like. These guys, they claim they've seen some of that look like absolute shit, and it was still just perfectly fine. There we go. I'm going to resolder that. That's not good. And then we're going to do a test fire. It looks like we don't have a brightener on the CRT. That's very good. Usually if you see a brightener, that means the tube's on its last legs. I doubt this will fix it. There's at least a little bit of grip there, but probably that guy, and this guy, and this guy, probably all bad, need to be replaced. We've got a bunch of these bumblebee caps in here. Those guys are worse than actual. They're worse than the paper-bodied ones because they seal everything up, and if there's any sort of moisture it gets inside of them, they can short out. That's problematic. Let's see what we got here for tubes. A damper tube, that's pretty critical. That is, where is that? I'm trying to get my orientation here. Where is that? This thing's all cattywampus and turning around in a weird way. Oh well, I won't bore you with that. So solder that, and I'm going to bring it up on a variac and see if, for shits and giggles, if that somehow wound up being the problem, even though I'm pretty sure it is not the problem. All right, it's time to try it out. And before I continue, I want to stress the safety when it comes to dealing with these things. My friend Andy just about had a heart attack when he watched my last episode because I failed to film discharging the CRT, which you should do. The CRT being the glass envelope, and they contain an enormous amount of juice. They can essentially hold a charge for years, and you really need to make sure and discharge them when you start doing your disassembly work. We're talking in the magnitude of many thousands of volts here, because it's required to have a pretty sizable static charge to fire the CRT. Think of it like as a miniature arc welder. I've got my isolation transformer and my variac, and I've already got it turned on. Bring it up first about 50% because it's not going to do anything below that. I'm just looking for smoke or anything potentially awry, and I don't even see any filaments, probably because it's just still not enough voltage to do much of anything. I got a little bit happening on that tube there. Bring it up a little more. Okay, we're at about 60%. Let's bring it up to, again, I'm just looking to see if there's any sign of filament on the CRT. I'm starting to see it a little bit. 90 volts. Again, I'm not really... All right. It is now on fully. And I can't even tell. Is this damn... You know what? I'm such a fucking idiot. I was sitting there with this thing turned off. All right. Now, put it up about 50%. Not seeing anything concerning. I think what I thought was filament's actually my beer sign reflecting off the tubes. I was fooled. All right, nothing happening at 50%. Let's bring it up to about 65%. And especially looking for filament on that guy. If that guy's out, then there will certainly be no high voltage. Okay, I'm starting to see real filaments now. Looks like we have quite a bit of tubes in working order so far. All right, let's go ahead and bring it up the rest of the way. And we've got filament on the CRT. That's good. That's not open or gone to air. See if I've got any audio. Of course, no picture. And I'm listening. I don't hear high current. That ringing sound that you usually get from the flyback, I hear nothing. I I do appear to have a dead tube though. That one right there doesn't seem to be unless the filament's just hard to see, it doesn't seem like it's on at all. Just looking at all of these here. What is that tube? I'll have to look at it. It looks like it could possibly be the way they've put this damn thing in there is hard to read. It's like sideways. But it could be the vertical output tube. That would certainly be problematic if that's bad. Anyway, I'm going to cut the power. This has been on long enough to where it does feel warm. 6CM7. What is 6CM7? Vertical output. But it does feel warm. That doesn't mean anything. It could be shorted. Alright, so what I'm going to do before I do anything else is test the tubes. At least this guy, because again I didn't see any filament on it. Again, that doesn't mean anything. I got to figure out how can I discharge this CRT. It doesn't look like there's an easy way to get at it. I guess I could possibly discharge it off of the flyback going directly to it. Anyway, sorry I'm talking to myself so much. Again, TVs are not like super my forte. Alright, so my tubes are good, and I tested my rectifier, or the whatever this thing is, giant diode. That's fine. Where is that going to anyway? Well, one goes to electrolytic. Seems pretty critical. Here, I'm not sure if you can see this. Damn it, this is hard to film. The means to unplug the CRT is back in there, so it's been a while since I worked on one of these, but I believe how it works is you loosen these 4 bolts, and this whole chassis slides out the front, if I'm not mistaken. I am going to discharge the CRT, but I'm going to have to do it via opening up the flyback transformer and seeking out the lead that goes to the cathode or the anode or whatever on the CRT. Okay, so this white wire here, that is essentially the anode lead for the CRT. So we're going to discharge that guy. Hopefully you'll be able to see this because it's kind of dark in here. You want to get an insulated tool here. I'm just touching chassis and the anode lead. I'm not seeing any static discharge. Well, I mean, it makes sense. CRT is not actually getting any high voltage, so it's probably not charged. Hence, I feel a little bit better about taking this apart. I'm going to flip the thing on its bottom just to make sure there's no screws there. It's been such a long time since I worked on one of these damn things. Let's see. Got this handle. Is that handle attached to anything? I think the handle does attach to the frame. It's been such a long time since I worked on this Zenith. Alright, I'll shut up and I'll do some disassembly. Well, just as I remembered, the whole thing just pulls out of the front of the steel case, and this set has had a lot of work done to it. First of all, that's not the original CRT. It would have been a Zenith branded CRT from the factory, so someone must have replaced this at some point. It's not horribly unusual for that to happen. CRTs did not last a huge amount of time compared to what they later did. That is a massive Cadhome resistor. I should probably check that guy too. Electrolytics have been replaced in it. That's a replacement. And this guy here, that is also a replacement, because you can see there's kind of some sloppy work done here where someone has globbed on the leads from the original electrolytic. So those are a lot newer. We've got this other one over here, though, and I know this is hard to film. That electrolytic is oozing its guts really bad, which means it has probably shorted or otherwise no longer. This is difficult to do one-handed. Where does that go to? That goes to, oh, looky here. Let me put the phone down and reposition the TV for a minute. It's hard for me to do this. Anyway, as I was about to say, looky here. Anyway, got this .047 rated microfarad cap that is completely cracked to bits here. In fact, I bet I could just probably go ahead and crack that open with my fingernails. Whatever. The fact of the matter is it's shorted. And we also have this spewing electrolytic here that is going to... These guys are both going to the same tube. This is a damper tube. If you messed around with the damper tube, you will not get high voltage at all. So I'm going to take a little bit of a stupid wager here. Those electrolytic capacitors on the other side, they look like they're more newer replacements, and I didn't see any swelling or any of the goo spewing out of the shape holes that are stamped in the phenolic material. So before I get too invested, I think I'm going to replace both of these components because they're clearly bad, and they're both heavily related and engaged with the damper tube. This guy's a replacement too. Kind of wonder how many hours this thing has had on it. Probably a lot. Alright, so I replaced both of those components, and yes, you see that little bulge there? That's basically the fusing of the foil and the electrolytic goo inside having spewed out. This guy, yeah, something happened there. It's pretty much fractured up. Kind of doubt this is what's going to solve the problem. I just want to see if I can get some life out of it before I proceed with all of the effort of recapping this. See if we get anything on this. I kind of doubt it. I'm so used to radios, I'm used to turning it up for the sound. No, we do not appear to have any sort of see if I can hear the flyback. Nope, I can't hear anything. I think it's time to start testing for voltages here. Now, it's difficult for me to film this because there's like, I don't want to stick my head right next to that anode there, but I'm getting no B plus or very little at all. There should be, I haven't looked at the schematic, but there should be, you know, hundreds of volts on these electrolytics, and I'm getting like 7-8 volts, which is probably just, could just possibly be filament leaking in somehow. It makes me seriously wonder if the rectifier is not good on it, because there's absolutely nothing happening anywhere on it. And I don't know if the diodes that I have are big enough. Look through my silicon diode collection, see what I've got. You know, just for shits and giggles, I did replace those diodes. And I was digging through my stash, and I happened to find some INS 540. And I looked up the rating on this thing. Should work. 1000 kV, 3 amps. It's maybe pushing a little bit, but it'll be enough to see if that can restore my B plus issue. So I'm going to lean over here and be prepared to turn this thing off instantaneously. For some reason I felt like I heard a sound of high current. Or is it possible? Well, I can at least measure B plus to see if we have any juice going on here. All right, let me put the phone down, do some measuring of voltage. I can't film this. Still got no B plus. Nothing. Interesting. Just because I had this problem with a television about a month ago, I'm going to wiggle some of these tubes. Nope. Still completely dead as a doornail. Well, the reason my B plus is not working is because my electrolytics, at least this guy, is bad. And I don't have a good cap checker for some inexplicable reason, but if you're curious about how to check it with an old-fashioned analog meter, I temporarily attached this modern capacitor so I can show you how they're supposed to behave. You touch it, and then this needle should very slowly start working its way back down towards zero again, because that cap is doing what it's supposed to do. It's charging and discharging. Now, when I test a lead going to one of the lugs of the first electrolytic cap in the coming off the rectifier, we see that it goes up a little and down a little, but then it just hangs there. Zero movement. So that cap is bad. In fact, all of the caps in this electrolytic, of which there are, God, this is so difficult to film. 3 leads. All 3 of those are bad. I'd imagine a good bit of the other electrolytics are also bad in this set. I guess they probably get whacked a lot harder than they do in radios. So I'm going to have to write down these values and attack this tomorrow. I'm going to have to start doing the recap job, and we'll start doing some preliminary tests on each major replacement to see if we've restored any sort of B plus functionality. All right, welcome back to day 2 of working on the Zenith television, and I got to say, this is a humbling experience. I've forgotten how much I have forgotten about working on these guys. But last night I ascertained we've got a whole bunch of essentially dead electrolytic capacitors, and so I'm not really able to get any sort of meaningful B plus, which is the high voltage DC voltage that this set needs to operate. And so what I need to do is replace the 3 individual electrolytics in that can with 3 individual replacements, and it's not going to be easy. Probably because I don't have the right parts on hand, so I don't have to be creative here. The shapes that are stamped on the side of the can, there's a hump, a square, and a triangle. 140 microfarads, 100 microfarads, 60 microfarads, all rated at 300 volts. And for those first 2, I'm going to have to combine capacitors together to come up with that capacitance. And I'm not sure if I have enough electrolytics. I do, actually. So what I'm going to have to do, for example, is we have the 100 microfarad one. I have 2 47 microfarads, and what you do is you put them together, positives to positives, negatives to negatives, and that will double the amount of capacitance that has. These are rated at 450 volts. So that's the 100. For the 140, I'll have to have 3 of these. And I think I'm just going to skirt by. This is 47. I think that's close enough to 60. I'll try that. I can add more to it if I need to. Actually, I might even have the 20 microfarad electrolytic up here. I do. And I'm sure there's a way to do this cleverly. I'm guessing what you could do is loosen the bolts here and there and here. That just involves moving all kinds of shit around. So I'm going to try to do it in the chassis. It's too bad that this one is right here and difficult to get at. By the way, you hear that? My neighbor refuses to change the belt on his car and squeals like a banshee every morning. It's really annoying. We also have this little guy here. This is lower voltage. It's 100 microfarads at 200 volts or 150 volts or something like that. That's no problem. I've got one cap that'll work for that one. The electrolytics over here are not a big deal. They're like 10 microfarads or something. So this one's going to be a real bitch. Let's see here. If we only had a few leads coming off of each one, chassis ground is the ground for these electrolytics, and we've only got one lead here for this yellow wire. That's for the triangle, and the triangle is the 60 microfarads. So we could mount the negative of that capacitor anywhere on this chassis. So I could, for example, like tack it like here or somewhere else, as long as it's got a chassis. So this is going to be real interesting. Usually radios, the stuff I work on is pretty basic. You just have like a whole crap ton of 50 microfarad, 160 volt caps, and you just stick them in there and you're done. This is going to require an awful lot of daisy chaining, and I'm sure it's probably not going to look beautiful. And I know you television guys are probably just having a hell of a time looking at this. In fact, my friend Andy was kind of making fun of me about this last night. He's like, "You just went ahead and powered it up, didn't you?" I was like, "Yes, I did. You know, torpedoes away, fire it away." So go ahead, poke fun of me in the comments. You might not even see this episode. This might be such a total failure. I'll be too embarrassed to show it. All right, so here's the end result here. I just had to get a whole bunch of terminal strips, bunch everything up except for this one. I was just able to mount it directly to the chassis. I also kind of cleaned up the rectifier because I wasn't really happy with how that looked. Obviously we can't have it dangling like that. So all the electrolytics are now replaced, and so I'm going to go ahead and do a test to see if we have restored any sort of B+. There could be something more sinister going on that I'm not aware of, but we'll find out sure enough. It's time to give it a test. All right, so here's the update. I did refinish all the electrolytic capacitor replacements, and then I still got very little B+. There's some, but there's not much there. And I started doing some looky-looing around, and I was just trying to trace where the incoming power goes in through before it starts working with the set. And I don't have a schematic. I need to find one. It's harder to find them for televisions versus radios. I looked and I can't find one. Just for the cursory look I did. Seems like everything's really reliant on this big fat resistor here. And it's resisting, but I have no idea what its value is supposed to be. All I know is that we've got basically 120 volts. Well, let's see, is that true? Yes, here's one side of the line. Got 120 volts on one end, then only like 30 coming out the other. So without looking at the schematic, if this is a giant dropping resistor, because again this is a hot chassis set, then it's dropping it way too freaking low, because that line coming off of the resistor goes to, well, I'm not familiar with my TV tube terminologies. I believe it's coming off the damper tube, which then feeds right into the flyback transformer. And without knowing what that value is, like I can only guess, I think I'm just going to have to maybe See if I can find something before I go in for the night, and if not, I'll try to find it tomorrow and go from there. All right, welcome back to day 3 of working on the Zenith television. What a difference a day makes. First of all, I discovered that the website Radio Museum has more than just radios. They actually carry television schematics, so who knew? And I was conversing with my friend Rajesh last night about this, and he said, check out, let's see if I can even read this. I printed really small. It's easier to read on my computer. He said, check out the, there's a 6 ohm 5 watt resistor coming off directly from AC line, which is this guy. And last night I didn't have a clue what value that was supposed to be. It's reading like 3 megs, which is a pretty good indicator that it's open. And this one end of the line comes in through here. And if that is out, then that just kills everything up and down the line. So we're going to have to do a few things here. Number one, by installing these more modern silicon diodes, as I've mentioned in some of my previous videos, these old selenium rectifiers are not as efficient. So you need to compensate for that additional efficiency with these modern diodes, because you don't want to overpower the circuit. So we're going to add this 100 ohm 10 watt resistor. We're going to replace that resistor with this, and that will compensate, because this attaches also conveniently to the other side of the diode here. So I'm going to add this in. Now the other thing I need to do is, I remember when I was working initially on this cap in particular here, what came out of it was this. And usually on an electrolytic you'll have markings that indicate positive or negative. And I noticed it said VNP. I think that means voltage non-polarity. And again, when I looked on the schematic, it is indeed a non-polarized cap. So I went to the museum, and luckily we have a 10 microfarad non-polarized capacitor rated for 600 volts. Schematic says it's rated at 245 volts, so that's well within our safety of margin by a huge degree. So my hope, and again I say the operative word is hope, is that we're replacing that resistor and then, making sure I'm not going to do any damage by replacing this other electrolytic with a non-polarized cap. We could have restored B+, and then there'll be enough high voltage to fire the CRT. We'll see. I don't know. This has so far been a rather interesting project, and so we'll see what happens. All right, we got the new resistor installed along with the non-polarized cap. I have to admit I'm a little bit, got a lot of anticipation that this might possibly work. I don't know. We're going to find out real soon. I'm going to bring it up slowly on my Variac, since we might actually be playing with real juice this time. So I'm going to bring it up about 50%. Look for anything going awry. It's hard to hear anything from the buzz of the oscillation transformer. Bring it up a little bit more. Just want to make sure that we have filament here. This cord's a little bit loose and wiggly. Should be seeing something by now. And the stupid plug has wiggled itself loose. Let's try this again. Alright, again about 50%. Should have cleaned these tubes so I could see the filaments a little bit easier. Plus it's broad daylight in here. That doesn't help either. This is certainly odd. We appear to have lost filament here. It's very disconcerting. Alright, let me see what's going on here. I think I have a bad connection somehow. Okay, well, I'm not going to spare you the pain of seeing the results, but basically, there's good news and there's bad news. I was able to restore B+, but I'm still getting no picture. The compensating resistor is clearly the wrong value because it was getting way, way too hot. So without the compensating resistor, the voltage is a little high, but I can moderate that with my Variac. I'm going to go ahead and do what I haven't done yet, which is actually test the tubes. I only tested one or two in this thing. And if one of these is out, that could affect the picture getting a picture. I could definitely hear the flyback whining away in there, but again, I'm getting no picture. So I know it's kind of boring testing the tubes, but got my Hickok TV7 out. We'll see what's up with these guys. I'm not concerned about the IF and RF tubes. I'm more concerned about the video-related tubes. All right, well, I spent a lot of time scratching my head on this, and I've been kind of conversing with my friend Rajesh back and forth, and he's been kind of giving me some hints. And so what it boils down to is a couple things. Number one, the original fuse in it was blown. I didn't realize that, and I don't have the type of fuse that it's supposed to be in there. It's one of these that twists in there, so I'm going to have to replace that with a modern fuse holder at some point. But in the meantime, I've got this jerry-rigged fuse holding here. The issue is that the basically the oscillator tube is not getting any filament here. This is it right here. I mean, when I say no filament, it's not glowing, even though it feels like it's warm. So it makes me wonder if basically there's either a resistor or a capacitor that is in series with these two, and it's killing my filament voltage, or knocking it way down. But without these tubes, the oscillator tube, it's not going to work. So what I need to do is get out the schematic and start tracing what leads go where, and see if there's something that's blocking the current getting those two tubes. The other thing that's interesting is when I pull either one of these, it just kills the rest of the filaments, which makes me, that gives me the belief that the filament string between these two is still active, but something is dramatically pulling it down. But at the same time, it's, I don't know. Like I said, I'm an idiot with these TVs. I'm definitely out of my comfort zone, and I'm not afraid to say that. But I just need to start doing some tracing. I believe the filaments on this, I've got my tube manual here. I can't remember. I think it's pin number 3 and 4 are filament, so I need to start taking a look at the leads going from filament and what attaches to them. But I'd be better off if I get my schematic so I can kind of trace it out. All right, well, just found what the problem was. First of all, it's very clear that maybe a lot of people that repaired televisions put shitty old burnt up tubes back in the boxes. Because I went to the museum, got 3 or 4 of these guys, and 2 of them were bad. I finally found the right one. The other thing is I wasn't getting any high voltage still, even though I'd restored B+. The problem was right there. There was a solder joint that was bad. So now, TV pretty much works now. See if it'll warm up here. Now I've got to replace a lot of nasty old wax capacitors, but good news is, watch it make a liar out of me. There we go. So that's not filming right because, I don't know, the camera's out of sync, but we got a picture. We got a raster, pretty wiggly and shaky. In fact, I'm not going to leave it on that long. That's probably not good for the CRT. Excuse me. Whew. Busy day at work, and I'm enjoying some Ballast Point Sculpin IPA. So now that we've gotten that issue solved, we have 10,000 million capacitors in there that need to be replaced. Let me unplug my ISO transformer. It's making all that racket. All those white ceramic things, those are capacitors, are no good. These bumblebee caps, those are no good. These orange drops or brown drops, those are fine. The ceramic discs are fine. Probably need to clean the controls too. There's a whole bunch of adjustable pots up here, and they're probably dirty. Also do need to find a way to put a compensating resistor in this to compensate for the new diodes. I need to determine what mathematically that should be. But this has been 3 solid nights of head scratching, and it's a stupid problem. It's just a bad connection all along. So the hard part's done. The rest of it's just going to be kind of busy work. It's going to be real interesting getting in here. Not a lot of room to work, and I'll also have to definitely remember now to discharge the CRT since it has a real charge on it at this point. Welcome to day 4 of working on the Zenith television. And before I continue on, I want to kind of brief everything that has happened so far, since this has kind of been a disastrous episode. I was too busy focusing on looking at the schematic and trying to troubleshoot it versus film a lot what was going on. So to summarize everything that has happened up to this point and what issues this set had. The original rectifier, which was a selenium rectifier, that was bad, so that had to be replaced. This guy's dangling here. I'll put a proper terminal strip for it. But that was a sand resistor that was open and preventing B+ from getting through. One of the 6 CM7 tubes was bad. We had an open fuse, which is in that fuse container. I need to install a new fuse holder. Our electrolytics were shot. And on the other side here towards the bottom, we had a bad solder connection. So the rest of the task here, first of all, I did discharge the CRT. And how you do that is, well, you should use a 1 ohm resistor in front of this, but you just want to kind of ground it to chassis. So I get a super long screwdriver, and luckily this is exposed. Touch it a few times, make sure you discharge it all. That way you're not going to shock yourself when you're poking around in there. Someone told me black and white TVs aren't as big of a problem, but I don't know. I'm not a television person. Need to clean these pots that are all up in here, because they do things like adjust the horizontal and vertical and brightness and contrast controls, and that can really mess up things, if they're dirty, just like a volume pot on a radio. So I'm gonna go through and just start replacing these caps. And one thing I'm curious about, never mind, I'm talking to myself. This is a true hot chassis set here. You've got this, which is, what is that actually? I think that's one of the switch leads. Yep, that's one of the switch leads. And sure enough, one side of it's going to chassis ground. Does it get more hot than that? I thought at first maybe that was a grounding cap. No, it's not. The way you read these is there's basically a diagram online. I've memorized a lot of these values just by the color. It's kind of like reading resistors. The rest of these are marked. Like we have a 0.047 microfarad cap at 200 volts, 0.0068 at 600 volts. That guy. I'm sorry, this is hard to film. Last night I counted, I think, not many. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 6. I believe there's maybe, just dropped the fucking pliers on my foot. I think there's like 1 or 2 up here. It's like 7 or 8 caps. It's not a lot. It's just getting in here. Like, this is what I got to work with. Getting in here is not easy. In fact, my neck has been sore for the last few nights because I've been leaning over in a weird angle getting at this thing. I'm sure if the old television guys will pipe in any second and say, "You dummy, you just removed those 2 screws and it folds back." Well, I don't know that. I'm not going to take that chance. But if someone knows that, next time I get one of these, I'll be sure to do it. All right, so we got all these capacitors replaced, and I feel like my neck is totally sore. I had to get at this thing from all kinds of weird angles to get all these guys in there. And what I also did was I kind of cleaned up this area. We put the fuse on a terminal strip, and I replaced this wire because it was kind of falling apart, and I installed a modern fuse holder. Kind of neaten things up a little bit. So what I'm going to do now is clean all the pots, and luckily, wouldn't you know, you can get to them just here. And what we're going to do is get some electrical contact cleaner and spray all the pots. And I don't want to get crap all over this chassis, so I'm just going to put a little in there. As he squirts shit tons of it in there. Alright. What I'm doing is just getting in like little areas that are, I mean, kind of like you can see the opening to the wiper where the 3 legs go in. And then what we're going to do is turn those around a whole bunch. It's not turning very easily, actually. Just going to go through here and work all these guys back and forth to clean all that crud out of there. Probably flush it again. Need to do the on-off and volume pot up here. Same thing. I don't know if you hear that ridiculous noise. That's a dog. Now, the last thing I want to do is clean the little turret contacts here. See, they basically... Where do they make contact, actually? The bottom. I wonder if there's a way to access the side. Yeah, there's got to be a way to pull this off. I definitely want to clean that turret. Alright, I just remembered, you're not really supposed to use contact cleaner. Someone told me you can use a pencil eraser, so I went and found a pencil eraser. I mean, truth be known, these look pretty clean. Maybe there's a little bit of stuff on it. I mean, it's obviously well protected. That's all pretty nice and clean. I mean, I'll do it anyway. I'll pencil erase all this shit. And then button everything back up again. It's not like it matters. All I'm going to be doing is run a digital converter through this thing on channel 3 so that the future owner, if they really, really, really want to watch the glorious, bountiful quality of 50s black and white low resolution television, they can do so to their heart's content. Or at least until the CRT blows, at which point, good luck finding that. By the way, someone told me last night, Roland, that's a good brand of CRT, so maybe it has a good long bit of life to it. Put a little lubricant on this end here. Just makes things turn that much easier. Put the cover back on, and what I'm going to do now is I have a digital converter box that will bring digital television signals in, and so I'm going to have a ballon. Where's the ballon? That's it. That'll connect to these two leads, and I'm going to get a speaker and clip it in. I get a bad feeling that maybe audio's out because this tube tested is barely there. And I looked around at the museum. We don't have this type of tube, so I'd have to order it. It kind of stink, I guess, but whatever. All right. Oh, well. This appears to be the TV that refuses to give up without a fight. So, recapped it, cleaned everything up, and I was pretty sure, well, I must be well on my way to having this thing in the can. And I've lost my high voltage on my CRT. Just really fucking aggravating. I think it's a cold solder joint in here. I must have jostled something loose. Last night I thought I'd fixed it by doing some soldering. Something in here is definitely loose. Either that or there's a failure somewhere else and I'm just not seeing or recognizing. I don't know. Anyway, definitely aggravating. Alright, whatever this thing is, and I'll need to cut this rubber shit off there. Actually, I need to go and look at the schematic on my computer. What is this? Let's see. Coming off of pins number 1, 2, 3, 3 and 5 of the 12, what do you call it? 12AX4. I want to say 12AX7. That's a familiar tube to me. Okay, so pins, again, let's see. 3, 1, 2, 3, 5. 3 and 5. Somehow this wire had come loose. That's a B+, as in the B+ for the set. I'm not sure if it just broke or if it was already broken, but wasn't making contact, so need to replace that. I don't know. I still don't think that's the problem. I think I might have just snapped that off right when I was feeling around in there. Okay, I found an idiotic problem. The fuse holder's not making good contact for some reason, so just for shits and giggles, I ran a jumper across those two leads. I did have picture just for a second there. Where'd it go? See, I was all like proud of myself and everything, then it fucked up again. Ugh. This is so beyond aggravating. I don't understand. Okay, I found an idiotic problem. The fuse holder's not making good contact for some reason, so just for shits and giggles, I ran a jumper across those two leads. I did have picture just for a second there. Where'd it go? See, I was all like proud of myself and everything, then it fucked up again. Ugh. This is so beyond aggravating. I don't understand. Well, I've got about the worst problem you could possibly have. CRT is coming off and on intermittently. And, you know, shaking the set or moving stuff around doesn't really cause anything to change. So I've got an intermittent short somewhere. Somewhere in all this wiring there's a short. And it's probably a cold solder joint. So I'm going to have to go in here and start just resoldering shit. I'm going to start with the most obvious, which is anything related to the high voltage horizontal vertical output oscillator, all that stuff. I'm not really worried about up here where we have the IF and RF tubes that are related to reception. They're not related to high voltage. It's going to be like kind of like this area, and then the areas pertaining to the two 6CM7 tubes. God. Ugh. Alright, well, I'm over at the museum, and I'm not sure if this is what the problem really was, but I had a theory. Yesterday, this CRT was working intermittently, and I thought, well, maybe it's heat related. And these tubes, these damper tubes, get hit pretty hard. And even though it tested good, I was like, well, let me see if we have a new one downstairs, which we did. A new old stock RCA. And I put it in the set. And now it's been sitting here for a few minutes running, so I don't trust it. But it seems to be doing okay now. I'm going to go out to the car and get my digital converter box and also hook up a speaker, see if we get any sort of actual video slash sound out of it. This is a much better situation than yesterday. Yesterday I was about ready to, I don't know, chuck this damn thing out on the curb. All right, so we've got picture, we've got video. I don't know who that is. That's Susie Orman or something. Anyway, that's good. The bad news is that the output tube for the audio is completely, it's hosed. Like, it tests barely registering anything on the tube tester. On one section, the section 2 doesn't do anything. And I don't have any of these tubes, so I have to order one. Luckily, they're not in huge demand. They're like $5 from eBay. So I'm going to let this run for a little while. Also need to add a compensating resistor to the fuse resistor I added, because when I brought it up to full, that was getting way too hot, which indicates there's not enough compensation. I'm going to let this run here for a while because, again, I don't trust it to keep working because I've had so much issue with it. But this is a much better improvement. Yeah, this is what television was like in the 50s. So just be grateful that you have cheap, high-definition 4K television sets, because I don't know. But this is a good bright CRT, because I'm here in broad daylight and you can still see it pretty clearly. Okay, so even though my output tube is very weak, I found that I was able to tweak the sound output IF here with this little tool. And so now I'm getting sound. So you can adjust. I'm going to reach around and adjust the back so you can see the difference. See? Quietens down. Now we adjust. Alright, so this is all I'm going to do to it. Actually, I need to add the compensating resistor in the back because we're not out of the woods yet on that. Well, a bunch of tubes came in, and luckily, a bunch of television tubes, and they happen to have a 3N B6 is what I needed, so I don't have to buy one.
Where are you posting?
That's disgusting. Alright, so it's the last day of work on the Zenith. I've got one more thing to do. Well, I was talking to one of the techs yesterday, and he said, you know, unfortunately, with the high contrast of modern graphics, and his experience with Zenith in particular, is that it's pretty difficult to remove the noise pollution. So you can, again, adjust your sound transformer, or
absolutely. You know, put in perspective. It's better to know history. We are melting pot.
That's probably about as good as it's going to get, unfortunately. The last thing I need to do is, I've got a huge Dale resistor here. We did the math as far as the amount of voltage it's supposed to have on B+, which is 245 volts. And the math wound up being, we needed a 20 ohm resistor. So I found a Dale resistor that is 50 watts rated, and it's using all of it. So what I want to do to dissipate that heat more, because it does get quite warm, is I'm going to mount it, that gold thing, I'm going to mount it to the chassis. And the last thing I'm going to do is clean up and polish the case over there. But we seem to be in pretty decent shape now. Again, the CRT is pretty bright. That's not even at full brightness. And you know, when they start getting dim, then that means the CRT is on its way out. So I think this one's a relatively fresh CRT. I mean, these picture tubes did not last that long back then. You were good for maybe a couple of years and you had to get a new one. But I think this one's a more recent replacement. Okay, so I'm going to turn it around, discharge the CRT, and surface mount that big fat power resistor. Alright, so we got the big fat Dale resistor hugged up against the metal chassis, and I made sure I mounted it where it wasn't directly over anything critical. And I want to make sure this is stable and there's no thermal breakdown, so I'm going to let it run here for a while, and I will keep an eye on it and go to the cabinet now. As we can see, the cabinet's just a little dusty, so I'm going to dust it off and use some car wax to bring back the shine, even though I don't think it really was a shiny cabinet to begin with, and it's also not the most exciting color, but whatever. Especially when I leave that sticker on there. Most people probably ripped it off as soon as they got back from the dealer. Alright, so let's do some cleaning. And again, like, keep an eye out for anything bad. Because I know that resistor, even though it's now surface mounted, is going to get pretty damned hot. I want to make sure there's going to be no issues there. I measured my B+ again. It's happily hanging out at around 243 volts, which is perfectly fine by me. That's just slightly below where it needs to be. It's not going to hurt anything. That just means it's going to be a little easing in on the voltage just a little bit. And I turned the brightness all the way down on the CRT while it's sitting here cooking away. There's no sense in unnecessarily stressing out the CRT as it does its burn-in test. By the way, here's my elderly cat Peanut again. She's really starting to slow down. She's I think she's lost a lot of her eyesight, so she's been yowling at me while I've been in the garage working on the radios. And so I come in every once in a while and give her a few pats. But I don't know why I'm filming this. I think I'm doing it for posterity because I'm not sure how much longer she's going to be with us. But we've had a good 21 years. Haven't we, Peanut? Yes, we have. Alright, that sat there for about 30 or 40 minutes running, and made a huge difference sticking this thing on the chassis like that. It just barely gets warm now. That's really good heat dissipation. Meanwhile, case is all buffed and polished up, and so I think after I clean up the front of the set, we'll be ready to do a reassembly and a final test, and this long drawn out frustrating project will come to a conclusion. Alright, it's back together again. It's looking pretty good here. Got had to fidget with the controls. I probably need to do a little more fine-tuning adjustment, but otherwise it seems like it's working pretty well. And it's pretty bright considering it's daylight, and I've got the garage door open, so it's a good sign of a good healthy CRT. And anyway, this was a challenging project, definitely, and after having not really worked on television since a while, I've kind of had to reintroduce myself to a lot of things that I'd forgotten about. But you know, with challenge comes a reward, and you learn new things. And I appreciate those of you who managed to make it to the end of this really long episode and deal with all of my frustrations. But I think we're good here. Now, I don't know who in the hell is going to want to buy an ancient black and white television, especially given that all the new TVs are, 4K and high